All right, friends, today in this tutorial, I want to share with you how to get audio out of YoloBox using the different audio inputs, the line level and the mic level input. These things are important, but for today's discussion, we're just going to be talking in generalities. I'm going to give you this information so that you can better set your overall unity gain so that everything sounds good. Now, there is a different level of signal that each input is expecting, and the preamp will amplify the signal that it receives based on which side you put it in. Specifically, the mic side is a much lower level signal. It's a lot quieter than a line level signal. When you plug in the line level signal to a mic level signal or a mic level input, it will be distorted. And you might ask why. And the reason is because the digital or the analog to digital converter is expecting the mic level side to be a very quiet signal. So it's going to boost that side quite a bit more than what it would do for the professional standard line level signal. Now, as we're talking about right here, I'm going to show you in the context of a soundboard and a tone generator. This is just a microphone or a recorder, a single track or dual track recorder that also has a tone generator function, as well as YoloBox Ultra. And I've set it up here so that you can see we are in the YoloBox Ultra audio meter, and this is going to show us where our meters are. We will use the audio panel from time to time in order to make sure everything's set properly. After we have this overview and gone through, I hope that you understand more about how to properly set your level. But there is one very important thing you have to know now, and that is that just because you set your levels properly on your board, or you have a signal that looks like it's correct, as you'll see later on when it's in the green and yellow, that delineation between green and yellow, if your live stream still sounds poor on the live stream destination called the Content Delivery Network, it's likely because of two reasons. Number one, it could be that just because you send a signal that makes the correct minus 12 decibel or is in the right range for YoloBox, that doesn't mean that you're sending a good signal. So the problem could be a bad signal in the first place. And then the second part of it could be that the Content Delivery Network is actually modifying that signal. Did you know that YouTube normalizes, Facebook normalizes, Twitch, they all normalize, and they all have different standards. So if you feel like you've got your board set up correctly and your audio should be good, but it sounds bad online, you need to review the standards for what the Content Delivery Network says it needs for a viable audio system. Here I'm going to share you with what to do. I hope that you can see some places here. I will go in and show a little closer. We're looking at levels. Right now, I want to show you we've got a board. Audio comes in from one side of the board, goes down the other side through the processor, hits the main, and then out through your speakers. Just because this is a micro or a soundboard right here doesn't mean it happens any different on your camera. When you plug in a microphone to your camera's mic in, it's doing the exact same process as it is here. You likely have places on your camera to adjust things like gain and overall levels. You may even have a choice to choose a line or a mic level signal, a pad, which is kind of like a fluff zone where you can tame hot signals a little bit. So, although I'm showing you on a board because it's easier to see, this applies to how you use your camera. Okay, let's talk about how we get to unity. Unity is something that I think people have a hard time with. Unity just simply means having all of our input and output sit in an audio signal chain set to their optimum setting. If you did not know, as you apply gain to an audio signal, it will begin to clip and distort. Now, analog signals, not digital, clip and distort in mostly pleasing ways for many people, especially on a guitar, like a distorted guitar. Digital clipping sounds horrible. And because of that, we measure these meters differently. Now, the meter on this board right here is a dBFS. This is dB full scale right here. So we have all the way up to over limits, and our analog mix right here would show us up to 0 decibels. That's different because it's showing an analog representation of what's actually happening. I recognize this is a digital board, but these meters, when in live mode, are metering from the analog signal coming in. This particular board is analog up through the input gain, which is excellent. Switches to digital for all of the effects and EQing, panning, centering, and everything else, and then goes back to analog for your final output. So we get the best of both worlds. So in this instance, when we look at this meter right here, we'll see I set my levels on this meter to 0. What I want you to know is that when you're working with analog, 0 decibels is a good spot to be, and it is very similar to minus 12 decibels when you're working with digital signals. So we've got two different representations here for that. We've got the analog meter right here, which is going to show up to over limit, which is plus 18 decibels, plus 18. And then we've got this little line right here that actually shows minus 12 decibels for the digital metering. Notice it says live input. I'm sharing with you this information so that you'll understand the tools and how to use them and what different meters may look like. If you'd like to know, the meter that YoloBox is attempting to mimic is the digital meter. So when YoloBox has a red, a yellow, and a green section, the red section is generally considered to be over limit at plus 3 decibels to 0 decibels. There's a little bit of, or minus 3 to 0. Everything between minus 12 to minus 3 is yellow, and everything below minus 12 decibels is green. That's why on YoloBox, we want to hit the delineation point between the green and yellow dots or metering. Let's talk about our signal. As we bring a signal in, we've got two ways to get the signal in. Every spot in your audio source has to be amplified, and that amplified means that you have to adjust some amount of gain. Gain is the sensitivity of the signal or the strength of the signal. The input, like we were talking about earlier, deals with the sensitivity of the signal coming in and how the digital analog converter handles it. Now, with this brief understanding, you may understand why having a signal that's too hot here, but looks like the decibel meter is good, coming into here on your YoloBox, the preamp may add additional gain to it, thereby clipping your image or your signal, making it sound bad. I hope you understand that by the time it gets to YoloBox, you're really only at the third stage. It doesn't matter what you're talking about as far as a camera, as far as a camcorder or a digital recorder or something like that. By the time it gets to YoloBox, at a minimum, it's gone through the microphone, it's gone through the preamp or the soundboard, and then it's in YoloBox. It's already at the third level of gain staging. If you're using a wireless microphone like we're doing today, just to get the signals for less cords, then it may even have a fourth or fifth signal input. So you're already at a place where small inconsistencies, small optimizations that aren't done well, which really wouldn't be optimizations, they'd be deviations, then begin to stack so your outboard sound is terrible. This is the concept called gain staging. And with gain staging, the idea is to optimize all of your inputs. So where does that begin? Your signals will always be best at 0 decibels reference unit to your sliders or your fader. Now, when you've got a soundboard, this is easy to determine. But let's say you're using a cell phone as an input. What's a good input for this? Like you're using your cell phone as an input on YoloBox, because you can do that, you can plug it in, but you don't have an audio fader. So what do? Well, in devices that don't have a traditional audio out, you just set your volume of your headphones or your volume out to be about 80%, 70% of the total volume that your can output. So just turn it all the way up and then click it back a little bit. You want your audio signal at the source. In this instance, it would be the cell phone, like we were talking about it. You want it to be good and strong, because as you go through the different stages and adjust gain at the different spots in the signal chain, you will amplify any inconsistencies or any noise. And that noise needs to, well, it'll sound terrible. So if you have too low of a signal as an input, but you're still showing up green here because you've boosted everything on YoloBox, you're going to have a terrible signal because your input signal was so low that it was hardly recognizable from the noise in the background in the input. And by the time you've used your gain to stage it up to what you think is unity, you've actually destroyed your signal. Let's talk about that with the easiest way to get going. I want to share with you right now, I've got this sound in this instance, how all of this is working. I want to show you how this is working. I'm actually sending this tone generator into YoloBox. So in this instance, this tone generator would go into YoloBox like a microphone, and then YoloBox would go out. I'm doing that so that I can plug in my headphone monitoring to my Model 12 to be able to show you what those inputs are actually doing in a better sense than just trying to show you this meter here. However, this is a hybrid way of connecting it specific to this video. Generally speaking, if you were going to use this technique, you would not have a soundboard in between. And if you did, you would have your mic coming into the soundboard, then going into YoloBox, and then going out. So you'd have your mic gain, your soundboard gain, your YoloBox gain. Remember, we said a set of 3. Here, we don't have 3. We just have 2 steps. I want you to recognize that. This is for demonstration purposes only. Okay, so I want to send a signal in, and I want to make sure that signal is correct. So right now, I'm turning my volume way down on this so the input doesn't send a proper signal. So I'm turning on my tone generator, and that tone generator is now on. You'll notice I've got all of my green bars lit up right here, and then after a few moments, it drops. That's going to tell us what YoloBox is doing to the signal. If I turn the signal off and turn it back on, you'll see it goes all the way up to minus 12 decibels, and then it drops. This has to do with YoloBox's own noise suppression system that it's doing inside. It's doing this because this is a tone generator. It's a 1 kilohertz tone at minus 6 decibels. That's what this is. So YoloBox is hearing this, and it's applying some sort of internal noise reduction. If this was a spoken voice, it wouldn't be doing that in the same drastic manner. It's really reducing by 6 decibels right here. In any event, I want you to see that we have tone going in. But remember, what if I said your signal was too low? For in this case, I'm going all the way down to 0. My headphone out, which is what I'm using as my master control, is too low. It's so low, it's not showing any signal. So when I plus up to 2 or 3 and allow YoloBox to settle back in, it drops down to not even about minus 20 decibels, which is pretty low, maybe minus 24. It would help if YoloBox explained, or if YoloLive explained the standard that this is using so we would know. I would expect it's using just a very compulsory private standard, not just consumer level, so not even prosumer. And that's not a dig at YoloBox, it's just saying we don't know, so always assume the worst in this case. I want to show you that by turning my signal up on my recorder that's creating the tone generator, it actually can over limit and clip. You say, Rob, you said that we don't want signals in the yellow. And that's true. We don't want signals in the yellow. However, I need for you to understand this very important thing. This tone is a specific tone that's being sent. It is designed to help master your meter so you can set everything to unity. This tone is not at the proper level. We know that this is a minus 6 decibel tone, and we are not getting minus 6 decibels right here. We're getting minus 12 decibels, which means there's additional headroom that we could use to optimize. 6 decibels loudness is something that your audience would notice. 3 decibels of loudness is twice as loud. 6 decibels is 4 times as loud. So someone may not notice the difference between something being twice as loud, but a 6 decibel drop will make things sound much quieter to the perceived sound. So you have to ask yourself, in the situation with using YoloBox, specific to the Ultra in this instance, since we know that it's applying in this instance because we can see it by turning off the signal generator. Look, we're at minus 6 right now. I've got the tone generator set to minus 6. But after YoloLive's servers, oh, not servers, but after the internal processing decides that this is some noise and it should be diminished, it actually brings down the volume. What that's telling us is that if we were to use this now that we've seen it settle in, we should actually give it the proper volume, 246. So we're at -6, so that we can actually be where we need to be. So that means in this instance, now that YoloBox Ultra has decided it's done its gain staging, it's done its noise reduction, we've settled into roughly the right area. I'm going to get it exact right here, and I want to show you right now. I'm going to turn it off. And when I turn it on, it's plussing up real high right there, but it will fall back just one segment here in just a moment. There you go. That tells us right now that this signal direct in is correct. Now, since we don't talk with a 4 kilo or a 1 kilohertz tone generator at -6 decibels, what does that mean for your actual sound? Well, it means that if you were using a microphone and you turned off the clip generator, then your sound, which we can't see here because I do not have a microphone capsule, would be set up correctly for the location that you set it up in. When you try to mic an area, it does no good to set your level based on a person that might be speaking in it if they're going to be talking over there. Microphones are only ever as good as their placement. So you have to think about placement and the type of microphones you use. That's why people like microphones on a podium or lavalier microphones, because generally speaking, they stay in one place and people go up to them. If you're trying to mic an area, it is much more difficult, and that's outside the scope of this conversation. But let's turn this on so that you can see and hear how I would actually do the gain staging on my board. We're shifting attention from YoloBox over to the board. This is how you might do it on a camcorder that has a level adjustment on the side for an XLR input, or an audio device like a field recorder, or even anything with a gain knob or function. It would happen similar. We're now turning our attention to this channel right here, channel 6. We're on live input, and my sound is coming in on channel 6. Currently, all of the sound output has been bypassed because I've got it muted. But this graphic display still shows some signal coming in. Well, the signal coming in is actually the headphone output. Now recognize you can choose a level to monitor at your headphones, but something very important about headphones is if you're cranking up the volume on your headphones, and you're turning it down from time to time, you don't have a standard reference point for your audio. That's why this step is so important. So in this instance, recognize if I had some sound coming in, I know you can hear that. That's what a 1 kilohertz tone sounds like, but it's not at 6 decibels, -6 decibels. We're at -7 decibels full scale. This is a high-pitched tone. -7 decibels full scale is like -24 decibels on your digital meter, right? So it's like a much softer sound. Notice these two don't match. They are not at unity. In this instance, I'm going to turn this back down because getting to unity means at this point setting everything to 0. We've already made these two to unity, the recorder, tone generator to the YoloBox. They are at unity. The process we went through at the beginning got these to unity. But how do we know if we're monitoring in this situation that we're monitoring at unity? Well, we put our master volume out to unity, which is 0, right? And then we come over here to our knob, our fader, we put our fader at 0, and we know that the signal that we're receiving is -6 decibels. Well, we talked about earlier that this line right here is -12 decibels. So -6 decibels is above the line. So we have to adjust our gain, and watch as we adjust our gain, the live input goes over. Now, I'm going to mute the track, but this is what -6 decibels would look like on the live meter. The problem with this is we have exposed all of our gain control on our analog knob to its max gain control. And what that is going to do is going to give us the potential for clipping because we're maxed out, right? We can even see that it's turning red when we turn it up. So instead of doing that, what you would do in your camera or wherever else you had the opportunity, if you had a professional device or even if you just had you can always adjust your gain boost, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. You'd have to check your manual to find out. Gain boost on channel 6, and I'm going to turn it to a plus 12 decibels. That's a big boost, okay? But we have a lot of gain that's already being adjusted. Now remember, just a moment ago, to get to minus 6 decibels, I had to be all the way up here on my analog knob at plus 50 decibel input. That's a lot. Now, with that gain boost internal to the board, it said listen a little harder. We are actually at that same level. These two are at the same levels right now. And instead of being at 50 decibels of gain boost, I'm closer to about 12 decibels of gain boost right here, which means that when the tone generator goes away and people are talking into that mic or music's coming into that mic, it is much less likely to distort. Okay, final tip. Well, not tip. Let's hear what this sounds like. We set to unity here. Okay, we've got, this is a little bit much. This will gain down here in just a moment. There we go. Unity, what does it sound like? Well, if you noticed, we were at the -6 right here, which is exactly, remember, we wanted to be at minus 12 is 0 decibels, so positive 6 is like -6 now. I'm going to show you that one more time. And we're over here at the 0 on our fader. I know you hear it, but you understand what I'm saying. So this meter matches this meter. Those are both the digital dBu meters. And this is the full scale meter, where being at 6 decibels matches the -6 decibels that we're trying to achieve. And listen to how much louder that signal is than to this. You can barely hear that. Because our source is now too low, right? The overall signal is too low. Well, my friends, I don't want to do this to you, but I feel you have to hear it. This is what happens when you try to get, we can't even achieve with an additional 50, with 62 decibels of gain, the gain boost of 12 plus an additional 50, 62, we still can't get to the -6, and this is what it starts to sound like. My beautiful friends, I hope that you have heard that whooshing, whirring sound of distortion just to attempt to get it at the -6 decibels. All of these things apply exactly the same to the mic input, except the mic input is already hot. So if we switch over to the mic input, in this instance, I actually need to come over to the mic input and turn this back on. You'll notice that here at the mic input, just being at volume 6, remember the one that was too loud just a moment ago, already gets us very, very close. So to gain this one, just so that we're on the same page, I would again adjust my volume until I was at 1, 2, 3. I'm at 3, there's go. I'm looking at these meters right here. I'm adjusting, now I'm at 3. I'm at the mic, 0 input there. I'm over here and I can bring my gain up. There we go. Again, now, instead of being all the way up here at 50 or 60, I'm back again at about 12 to 15 decibels. And I'm able to be there because the amplification of the preamp handles the signal different, whether it's a line level or mic level signal. So if you accidentally plug in your line level to your mic level, you're going to obliterate your sound. And if you don't realize that's the problem, then you won't know where the issue begins. So with all that being said, I hope that you have found this helpful. I want to thank you so very much for watching and catch you guys on the flip side.